for the Finance Committee meeting of Monday, May 6th, 2024. I will remind you that we are in the leadership transitional period. So our membership is shifting, and I'll ask staff to please call the roll.
Not sure what that means about shifting. Is Council President Figueroa Cole a member yet, or?
She is, I believe, formally a member.
Okay, Council President Figueroa Cole. Okay, Alder Revere.
Here.
Alder Vitiver.
Here.
Alder Madison.
Here.
Alder Evers.
Here.
Alder Rummel.
Present.
Mary of Quorum.
Thank you. All right. Our first item is public comment. I am just going to refresh, but I have no general public comment. So we'll go on to disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals on items on today's agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on. Oh,
sorry, just
Alder Madison.
Yep, I do. Sorry. I do just want to say, I was looking for the item number, but the Progress Center is funded by the Center for Community Stewardship, but deciding on funding going to them for them to work with another organization won't have any effect on me deciding anything.
Thank you, Alder. All right, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have speakers wishing to speak on item 23. Item 24 is a discussion item, and then item 25 is a closed session item, so those will be separated. Are there other items that members of the body would like to have separated? Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to separate item on number 8 just to get more information about Muffin. And then I don't know if I'll be preempting Alder Curry, but I would like to also pull a number 19 just to learn more about that process.
All right, items 8 and 19. Thank you, Alder. Are there any additional separations from the consent agenda? Seeing none, then we'll be separating items 8, 19, 23, 24, and 25. If I could have a motion on the consent agenda, perhaps Alder Revere.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to move adoption of the agenda with the exception of agenda items 8, 19, 23, 24, and 25. And with our combined congratulations to our newly minted library director. I guess that will be official tomorrow night.
Thank you, Alder. Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Vitiver will second. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda with congratulations to our new library director? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. Balance of the agenda is adopted with those recommendations, and we'll go to item 8, which is Legistar 82501, authorizing the Director of Information Technology to transfer certain city-owned conduit, fiber, and related infrastructure to Muffin C or its members when it no longer serves the city's needs. On item 8, could I get a motion, please?
Move adoption.
Was there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Alder Rummel, you had questions.
I just, it seems like I used to hear a lot about Muffin, and I just wondered what has happened in all the years that we've put in this fiber and what motivates this resolution.
Can I go ahead and speak, Mayor?
Yes, please, Sarah. Sorry.
Okay. Hi, Alder Rummel. Hi, everyone. So Muffin, which stands for you would think Madison Unified Fiber Network, but it's in fact the Metropolitan Unified Fiber Network. It's a combined group of 16 area flagship entities in Madison. So this includes Madison College, Madison Metropolitan School District, South Central Library Systems, UW Health, and then UW Hospital and Services, the University of Wisconsin, Department of Transportation. They're a little bit different, so I'll pull them out. We have Dane County, Daynet, City of Middleton, City of Monona. There's quite a few different partners that are part of the Metropolitan Unified Fiber Network. And what it is it's the middle mile. So the City of Madison owns the majority of the fiber, and then these other entities have smaller bits of it. And what we do, because I'm also the chair of Muffin, is we are providing the connection between these different facilities. So for the City of Madison, all of our different facilities are in our conduit and the fiber is running between all of those facilities, but there are extra strands and other entities that are part of that Muffin consortium, because we have a contract and an agreement with Muffin that we can use their fiber when we need to. They can use our fiber if we have available fiber strands so that they can get to their places. So for example, down East Washington or University Avenue, we may have strands going to a certain distance and location, and then we may not have availability, but then we can use Muffin strands and not have to purchase new strands that then can take us further down. So it's a shared service among this consortium, is basically what it is. And what this resolution is asking is that there are a couple of locations where the City of Madison may have been part of a build, and there is, so the one that we're in particular is the Overture Center. So we owned it years ago and we had built fiber to it. We no longer own that facility and we never pulled the strands. And so we would like to hand it over to Muffin so that they can take care of that lateral, so that the City of Madison is no longer contracted and responsible for taking care of the conduit and the fiber that's in there. And so that's really what this is about, is just simply being smarter and more efficient about this fiber and not owning things that we don't have any responsibility for anymore, and handing it to Muffin, who will then take care of doing the maintenance on it, doing the locates, so paying for making sure that there's not a gas main there with MG&E, et cetera. They're taking on that cost rather than the City of Madison. We're trying to save them the city a little bit of money here.
Thank you, Sarah. Any other questions? If not, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we're recording unanimous vote in favor. Thanks again, Sarah. And we will move on to item 19, which is Legistar 83009, supporting the effective dissemination of funds provided through the Violence Prevention Services for At-Risk Apartment Buildings Amendment. On item 19, can I get a motion, please?
Move adoption.
Thank you, Alder. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. On item 19, Alder Rummel, you had questions as well.
Yeah, I'm just really glad to see this on the agenda, but I recall during the budget amendments, some of the ideas about this money were kind of tenant outreach, and I'm just wondering how it all got resolved with the search for these partners, and just curious who we got.
Thank you, Alder. I think that's a question for public health, and I see Ariel is here. Ariel?
Thank you, Mayor. So the selection for who we're going to fund through this opportunity was based on who is currently doing work in the allocated apartment complexes. So following some of the recognition that some apartment complexes were experiencing increased rates of violence, some organizations just stepped in with their programming and services on the ground. And so we, through conversations with those organizations, decided to move forward with funding them to continue to do work on the ground with this one-time funding. A lot of the activities that the organizations are doing are surrounded around resident outreach and resident intention. And so whether it's providing direct access to the services that that organization provides for those residents, or conducting a specific service on the site of the apartment complexes, that's kind of how this was chosen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Alder. Any additional questions for Ariel? If not, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 19? Seeing no objection, we'll record that unanimous vote. Thank you again, Ariel. And that will take us to item 23. Item 23 is Legistar 82711. And I will note that the recommendation or the request from the Parks Department or the Parks Division is to refer this to our next meeting. But we do have one registrant wishing to speak, Alex Saludos of District 5. Do we have Alex?
Mayor, I
Present.
do not see anyone in attendance with that name.
Thank you. So then on item 23, Alder Vitiver?
Oh, that we had gotten a note from Alex that he thought he would be late to this meeting because he had a conflict, but that if we were moving on, so be it.
Thank you, Alder. I appreciate that. And at any rate, the motion should be to refer. So to that end, could I get a motion to refer to the next Finance Committee meeting?
Move to refer.
Second.
Moved and seconded to refer item 23 to the next Finance Committee meeting. Questions, discussion? Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of referral? Seeing no objection, we will record a unanimous vote in favor of referral of item 23. And that will take us to item 24, which is Legistar 83240, the 2023 fiscal year end update. Dave, I'm assuming this is you.
It is. Thank you, Mayor. Let's see if I can share my screen. It looks like I can. All right. Can everyone see that? All right. Super. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Finance Committee members. I will run through a little bit of background on how we ended 2023 in the general fund. And it's good news, and also good news for at least the preliminary outlook for 2024. All right, so we'll cover actual revenues and expenditures and a little discussion on the general fund condition. So actual revenues finished about 5% above budget. That is due entirely to investment income. You'll see the other lines were roughly at budget or slightly below. But investment income was significantly higher than budget. And a lot of that is due to higher yields, so higher interest rates on our cash balances. And that average annual yield increased threefold between 2022 and 2023. We also had a mark-to-market adjustment that was significantly negative in 2022, and then that was reversed in 2023. And that's just the sort of comparison of where our actual investments are in terms of their the interest rate that they're generating compared to what the market would be if we had to sell them on the last day of the year. We also had discovered that the model that we were using for projecting investment earnings understated cash balances, which was really not an issue during very low interest levels, which you've seen has been mostly the case over the last 10 years. But we've had a rapid ramp up over the last few years. We have updated the model to account for those total cash balances. The mark to market, which again, as I said, is that sort of gain or loss depending on where the market's at compared to where our investments actually are. We took a large loss in 2022. That was masked by considerable amount of underspending by agencies in 2022, if you recall. That reversed itself, and we got positive $9 million in 2023 to kind of address this large year-to-year shift or possible shift in mark-to-market. We have set aside $5 million in the fund balance. We've assigned it in an investment reserve to help ameliorate future year possible shocks like this. Turning to expenditures, expenditures were nearly $16 million below budget. And this is primarily due to vacant positions throughout city agencies. And because of those vacancies, centrally budgeted compensation reserves were not needed or not needed to the extent that they were budgeted, such as for compensated absences, which is often used for to pay for costs in the police and fire department budgets, as well as funding that was set aside. If you recall, there was a one-time pay increase at the beginning of 2023 from reserves, and ultimately that was absorbed within agencies' budgets. So that was not spent. There's also some underspending in community development. Part of that is $2 million that was budgeted to help seed an endowment fund. Ultimately, that fund has not yet been started, and so that funding was not spent. It has been assigned in the city's fund balance in the event or at such time as the endowment fund is ready to go. That money would need to be appropriated, but it is in reserve. There was also some funding appropriated that would have been transferred from the general fund or to the general fund from the grants fund from ARPA funding. Ultimately, though, those costs got charged directly to the grants fund. So that's a little bit of an anomaly of underspending. So about 4% underspending, primarily due to vacant positions. You can see these variances by functional area. Again, most of that occurred in planning and development. That's the ARPA funding I described in community development. And then in miscellaneous, that's those sort of compensation reserves that ultimately were not needed due to vacancies. And then you can see roughly the other functional areas, agencies in those areas were pretty much at budget. Some savings in primarily the police department from due to vacant positions, as well as the fire department being roughly at budget rather than in a shortfall as we've seen in recent years. And then in general government, underspending occurred in primarily in information technology and council office, for example, the Office of the Independent Monitor. Again, most of that is vacancies or just general underspending. All right, so what does this mean for the fund balance and outlook? It means we have very strong reserves. We will finish above 21%. That reserve amount is a share of the general fund budget. Because revenues exceeded expenditures by $31 million. We did change, as I mentioned, amounts set aside in assigned fund balance. The We have the fund balance applied for 2024. If you recall, there's $9 million that's used to balance the 2024 budget that has to be assigned in the 2023 year-end fund balance. That endowment for the homeless, this investment loss reserve I mentioned, and then the life insurance and disability plan reserves also increased due to better investment performance and underspending in those areas. So what we see is compared to our policy target of 15%, that's the green line in the graph, we're above that, and we expect that that will go as high as 23% or so by the end of 2024. And again, that's due primarily to the investment earnings that we're seeing and continued high interest rates due to the Federal Reserve's efforts to address high inflation. So this is the fund balance history since 2020. What we're really seeing is that underspending, primarily due to vacant positions, along with investment earnings, has resulted in a higher fund balance. And again, just a reminder that the fund balance and the level of fund balance is a key part of our AAA bond rating, which allows us to get the lowest interest cost on our debt. And even at 15%, we are still low for AAA rated issuers. So having a higher fund balance helps solidify that AAA bond rating. And then using that fund balance for budget balancing activities, it's just a reminder that's a one-time or short-term measure. That's not a permanent solution to the city's sort of structural deficit that we've been talking a lot about. So you can see in the table just the dollar amounts there and what's been happening and what we expect to happen with the ending balance, which we often colloquially call the city's rainy day fund. So what does this mean for the year we're in right now? We do expect investment income to exceed budget again by about $10 million. And again, that's due to sort of the higher interest rates hanging on longer than we expected. And that's due to in the overall national economy, inflation is persistent, and the Federal Reserve has delayed expected reductions in interest rates due to the persistence of inflation and continued relative strength in jobs. Other revenues are expected to be on target in 2024, and we expect expenditures will be close to budget rather than well under budget. That's due, as you may remember, to the 1% across the board reductions to agency budgets that was included in the 2024 adopted budget, as well as increased salary savings in the larger agencies. So that will probably mean not as much underspending due to vacant positions. We've also seen that vacancy rate fall somewhat from what it has been over the last few years. We will provide an update to you on the 2025 cost to continue and the outlook for 2025 at your meeting of this committee on May 28th. And we'll be back with mid-year projections for this year, 2024, at the July 22nd Finance Committee meeting. So that's the quick presentation of the general fund condition. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Are there questions for Dave? Alder Bidever?
Dave, you said something about the pay increase was absorbed in city budgets. Can you just talk about that? Was that the payout from the one-time payout from the excess in the workers' comp fund, or is that something else?
Yes, so there, as you are stated, Alder Bidever, there was excess actually in the city's life insurance and disability insurance reserve. And we took money out of that reserve and used it, or at least budgeted it for that one-time payout to staff at the beginning of 2023. Ultimately, that increase was offset by savings in agency budgets because of the level of vacant positions. So we had budgeted for to fill positions, but ultimately that level of positions was not filled, and we had savings from budgeted salaries and fringe benefits that did not basically was not needed because we had just a higher level of turnover in positions.
So then we still sort of have that bank of excess in that fund.
Well, it's basically now in the general fund balance. So it's a part of that total that's in there
Okay.
now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Rummel?
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, can you help me understand this, what you described as the $10 million investment income at the end of this, moment in time we're in? Is that like a one-time thing, where we always talk about one-time money? And how do we look at that when we were looking at, the 2025 issues? I know you said we'll put some money into a reserve, so in case it goes up or down based on the market, but I'm just wondering how long does that stay around, that money, or does it go up and down because of the market?
Yeah, thank you, Alder Rummel. That's a great question. We do not expect investment income to remain at this level. I mean, this is, as you saw in that one graph in terms of where interest rates have been and what our yield has been from our cash balances, it's been historically around maybe 1%, and now it's at 4%. We don't think it's going to stay at that level. That's really because of where interest rates are at by the Federal Reserve. It is expected that the Federal Reserve will begin to cut rates at some point this year, maybe early next year. And we then expect that investment yield to fall. But we do, as I said, for 2024, there'll probably be 10 million more in investment income than we budgeted. We did account for some of that in the 2025 outlook, but it could change the 2025 outlook a little bit. But we'll know more once we go through all the cost to continue changes, and we'll be back to you with an updated number for 2025 at the May 28th Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, could you go back to the slide that shows the change in the general fund balance and the other, aka the rainy day fund over the last couple of years? It's one of your last slides.
Yes, I can. Just let me see. Is that the one you meant?
No, there was a graph that you had
yeah.
Toward the end of your. No, not there. No.
This one?
Yep.
Yep.
In fact, I think there was one more. There was actually, it wasn't a graph; it was numbers. There was
This one?
Maybe I can't quite remember. So, was there one more? Maybe
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got
Okay.
this and this in terms of fund balance.
Right. Yeah. This is the one. Yeah. So the ending unassigned balance in 2021, roughly 56 million, projected now to be at 92 million. When we're at 56 million, were we at any risk of having our bond rating impacted by that level of fund balance?
Not at that level. I wouldn't think so in isolation. Now, the rating agency, Moody's, looks at a number of different factors.
Sure.
So
Yes.
how you might use your fund balance, what's happening with the economy, financial management, things like that.
Well, that makes sense. And remind me and my colleagues here, the extent to which we have dipped into the fund balance to balance the budget in recent years. Can you be specific of the instances in which we've done that?
Yes, so in the 2021 budget, we applied $8 million. And then in the 2023 budget, we did apply that 3.4 million, but that came from the life insurance and disability insurance sort of reserve. And then that was supposed to be spent for that one-time pay increase for staff. And then in the 2024 budget, there's 9.2 million that is allocated for balancing the budget.
So while we don't want to make a habit of it, it's not uncommon to use it sparingly, correct?
We have at times used applied fund balance in prior budgets. No, it's not sort of something we've never done. It has been done, but it needs to be done in a way that you have to keep in mind it's a one-time source of money or maybe a short-time source of funding. Fund balance is not an ongoing source of funding.
Understood. One last question. You mentioned that one of the reasons why we have this windfall in our fund balance was that interest rates remain high throughout the year.
Yep.
And that historically, at least in recent years, since the Great Recession, had been more close to a zero interest rate or very low. We don't expect interest rates to go down that far, even if there are some rate cuts. Is that correct? I mean, of course, we don't know. We don't know.
I mean,
the economy could go
hesitate.
into a recession and
Exactly.
the Fed.
I hesitate to make.
Yes, of course, but at this, nobody's projecting at least those deep of cuts at this point. So it's possible that interest rates we could see 1 or 2 basis points come down, but it wouldn't necessarily come down to zero.
Right now, the projection is the Fed will cut rates and our yields will drop to probably around 3.25% to 3% by the end of 2025, which you're correct would still be elevated from what it has been historically.
Right, in history.
Yep.
So there may be some additional investment income, though we cannot bank on it. There is a possibility of that in the future.
That's correct. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions for Dave? Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave, thanks for the overall very positive report. I was especially interested in the confirmation that police and fire came in within 1% at the end of the year. Could you speak to how their respective overtime line items came in at the end of the year for police and fire? I'm curious.
I'm gonna see
how they.
Don't know if Betsy's here.
I saw Betsy in the meeting.
If Betsy can jump on, she might be able to speak to that.
Yep, I'm just pulling it up. So police overtime ended the year about $240,000 over budget. And fire ended the year in overtime about 1.8 million over budget.
And how does, as it relates to the recurring issue with fire overtime that Dave, obviously you spoke to in your initial presentation, how does that compare to the last few years, please, Betsy?
I don't have those right in front of me. Let me see if I can pull that up. It might take me a second here to get that.
You could get back to me offline too. I don't want to hold up the meeting, and I realize I'm putting you on the spot. Is it fair to say that in the case of both of those public safety agencies that the reason why they ended up in the positive budget wise is because then in both cases, they had still significant vacancies in FTE authorization.
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Were they both fairly consistent anecdotally from prior years? Do either of you know?
I would say police was. I think fire was a little higher than it has been.
Higher vacancy rate in 2023, Betsy?
Yeah, actually it's about the same. They had 20 resignations and retirements in 2022 and they had 18 in 2023.
So Alder Revere, most of that underspending we showed in the, sort of public safety and health was in police.
Yeah, and police had, police was under budget in their perm salaries, about $1.3 million.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both for confirming my assumption. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions for Dave and his team? If not, thank you, Dave. And the final item on our agenda is a closed session item. But I will note that we do have one registrant available to answer questions. Kevin Ramakrishna of District 4, I think, is available to answer questions. If you had them before we go into closed session.
So, Mayor, can I chime in here?
Yes, please, Matt.
So Kevin actually won't be here tonight. I'm myself and then Dan Rolfs are here for any questions from alders. And I guess my suggestion would be that we start in open session. The reason we notice it for a closed session is because we thought that might be a possibility based on questions. So my suggestion would be we start an open session. I think, based on the resolution itself, there's no reason we can't talk about it in open session. And then depending on where the conversation goes, based on questions, I guess I can jump in and let you know if I think we need to go into closed session to discuss at that point.
Okay, sounds good. So then item 25 is Legistar 82890, the very long title, which I will not read all of, but amending the capital budget to authorize additional general fund supported borrowing for the 1402 Park condominium, which is part of the Truman Olson redevelopment. On item 25, let's start with a motion. If anyone is ready to make that.
So moved. Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Matt and Dan, do you want to start, or should we just jump right to questions? Dan, we can't hear you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Well, I have
Oh,
two
there's that why your hand is raised? Alder Vitever? Yes.
Yes, I just wanted a staff presentation. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Alder. We will head in that direction. Dan Rolfs, take it away.
Sure thing. So attached to the Legistar file, there's a memo outlining where things are at right now. So the state of the project is we have completed the building. The city, as I think most of you are aware, has acquired the condominium, the grocery condo. That's unit number 2 at 1402 South Park, now 815 Cedar Street. During the final design of the interior of the grocery store for the build out, there were items that came up that were identified as additional costs by the grocer's store design team. Those are laid out in the memo. The total cost comes in at around $1 million. We've had some discussions with the development team with Rule and Moving Out as far as how these costs could be covered, along with working with the store design team to make sure that we've got everything hopefully wrapped up to be able to move this project forward. Our goal here is to get this done, approved, and be able to move forward with construction of the grocery store so that we can deliver on the city's goal of ensuring that residents in South Madison have access to a full service grocery store. The plus side, if you can look to that, is we have an approved lease that is referenced in the memo. And if we're unable to have any additional funding from the development team, it would take an additional 3 years of lease payments to recover the proposed $1 million of extra funding under the initial term of the lease. Again, this is all sort of laid out in the memo. Additionally, there are 3 additional extensions on that lease for 5 additional years. So we've had very constructive conversations with the development team about solving this challenge, and we've come to what we believe is a fairly reasonable conclusion to those discussions that we can, I think, probably be more appropriate to discuss in closed session if you have questions about those particulars. But that is a brief overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Dan. Other questions for Dan or Matt? Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a question or two that legal counsel would probably advise would be best in closed session. I'll just mention, for example, error and omissions. Is that the type of thing that I presume, Matt, you would like in closed session discussed?
Yes.
What?
Yeah, if that's going to be your question, if your question involves that, then I think we should probably, I would suggest, Mayor, that we have a motion to go into closed session.
Alder, did you have other?
If my colleagues are willing to go into closed session briefly, I think that probably would be the most prudent course. And I'm happy to make that motion now if it's appropriate time.
Let's just see, Alder Evers. Any objection to that?
No, I was actually going to move that we go into closed session, so I will second Alder Verveer and then.
All right, so Alder Verveer, if you would do the formalities, please.
Move that the committee go into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, parent 1, parent E, Wisconsin statutes, which reads as follows: deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. If the Finance Committee does go into closed session, notice is hereby given pursuant to section 19.85 sub 2 Wisconsin statutes that it may reconvene in open session without waiting 12 hours as specified in the statute.
That's motion. Alder Evers will second.
Second to all of that.
Thank you. This is a required roll call vote. So all those in favor of going into closed session, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and Dave will please call the roll.
Council President Figueroa Cole,
Aye.
Alder Verveer,
Aye.
Alder Vitever,
Hi.
Alder Madison,
Aye.
Alder Evers,
All right.
Alder Rummel.
Aye.
Mayor, that's unanimous.
Thank you. So we will move into closed session and ask staff that aren't here for this item to please excuse themselves. And alders are welcome to stay. And we will give our friends on the media team a moment. While we are waiting, Alex, I see that you're on the line. We did refer item 23 to the next Finance Committee meeting.
Okay, Mayor, looks like we are all good to go.
Great. Should we restart the recording?
Looks like I can resume the recording.
Great.
Okay, I will do that right now.
Recording in progress.
All right, so we are back out of the closed session, and we do not have a report. Questions were asked and answered, but the item is still before us. So just as a reminder, we're on item 25 of the Finance Committee agenda of May 6, 2024. That item is Legistar 82890, which is amending capital budget to authorize additional borrowing for tenant improvements for the lease at 1402 Park. Are there any additional questions for staff on this item? If not, it has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on item 25? Seeing no discussion, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of item 25? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. That is the last item on our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good evening.